Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering, as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Today, I'm delighted to welcome special guest Phillip Mountrose, who's here to talk about a number of things, including "We are masters in the making," which is an uplifting expression if ever I've heard one. I'm excited to do this. Pioneers and innovators in spiritual growth and healing. Phillip and his wife Jane are holistic coaches, energy healers, and authors of numerous books, including Tap into the Power of Love and Happiness with EFT and Spiritual Kinesiology Magic in Minutes. Say that very quickly 3 times. And you can actually find Jane and Phillip at philipandjanemountrose.com. And that's PhilipandJaneMountrose.com. And that will also be in the show notes. So, Phillip, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Great to be here with you, Catherine, and the audience.
Thank you. So you've actually, you're what over here we call long in the tooth in relationship to working with spirituality and all sorts of associated things. So there's so much we could talk about today. The biggest problem today will be actually finding a way of actually stopping talking, because there's just so much of interest to talk about. Would you like to kick off this expression, "We are masters in the making"?
Mm-hmm.
Can you remember when that notion first really became clear for you in life?
Right. So the masters in the making, we kind of had a crystallized higher understanding of we mean. When I'm saying we, I'm talking about my wife and partner Jane Mountrose at Awakenings Institute. It's not. We are going to talk about the spiritual realms, but that's just.
You're talking about the corporeal we, as opposed to
Yes.
the other we that you could have been referring to.
Yeah. The physical 3D we and the spiritual we. We're going to talk about both, actually. But when we, Jane Mountrose, myself, got a clearer vision of this masters in the making, which really was part of the impetus for our recent book, Awakenings to Your Magnificence, Your Journey into the Next New Frontier for Humanity, is what does that mean? We are awakening individually and collectively. So it's going more from seeking to finding to embodying, and and there's so many levels to that. When you get to one level, then you're sort of at the certain level of the mountain, then you look at and you realize, wow, there's so much more above I hadn't even seen, so many other mountaintops. So if you think about it, if we're connected with God or creator, oneness, whatever term suits you, and that's a creative source. We are creative too, and we are continually creating. And at a higher realm, we are more whole or more connected. A lot of the blinders are off. We can see more clearly without all the physical survival things we're dealing with daily. So we're there and we're here. There's obviously a gap there. And so we're going to the place that the reason why we are here on Earth, 3D world, our everyday reality, is there's a reason for that. We don't believe, I think the people who are listening to this, watching this, the seekers and holistic minded people, realize that we're just not random people, beings who are just accidentally doing whatever, and it doesn't mean anything, but it does mean something. And connecting that gap and bridging that and taking it to higher and higher levels where more and more mastery is. Because at a certain point, I don't know if the people who we consider masters are ever, finished. It's just if the universe is evolving and we're being creating every day, we're learning more and more possibilities are imaginable and realizable and being able to be embodied now. So that is some of the idea of we're in this bridge between, yes, we're here now and we have to pay the bills and feed ourselves and so forth. And yet we're here for something larger beyond that. That's just part of it. And we can use that for the larger becoming the master in the making.
Beautiful. I love that, because it's when you're saying we're masters in the making, and then you're emphasizing that there's always further to go in our evolving. So will we always be masters in the making?
I think so, because if you say you've mastered it, then you're complete. So if you're complete, would you rather be continually evolving, creating, or would you rather have finished it and say, I'm done, I'm complete, then what?
Yeah.
And I guess the paradox is from a certain oneness place, when you enter what we talk about, the field of pure potential, where you're connected with everything and everyone. Well, that in itself is a complete realm of oneness or wholeness, or some people say emptiness, but yet it's continually creating and reinventing itself and expanding things. So it's dynamic. It's not something like stationary and finished and static.
I understand. So this beautiful phrase, masters in the making, was something that came through and was kind of refined by you and Jane working together. What was the
Yes.
process like of that taking place? I mean, was it a brainstorming session with flip chart pages and things, or was it like a process of meditations? And what was the process of getting to the point of, because that's a very powerful phrase you've got there. And I think anyone listening probably realizes these things don't necessarily just one day you walk in and you just know that's the thing you're going to use. There's a kind of a process, isn't there? Would you like to share about that for us?
Sure. So we've been involved in the holistic field for over 3 decades, for many years. And as you can imagine, like a lot of people listening, have done many, many things. We've developed a lot of our own processes with holistic EFT tapping and spiritual kinesiology and other things. And since we're married and we're very close that way, but we also have a business together, we're together quite a bit. And, at first Jane was kind of worried about that, just, is because she saw some of the people where she worked as an architect earlier in her career, and a husband and wife thing, and just saw a lot of things she was hoping wasn't going to happen in our relationship. But oddly enough, somewhat to our surprise, it's worked out remarkably well. And we have a lot of enough of the shared interests, things we enjoy doing together. And of course, all this spiritual and holistic healing work has a deep bond. So we're continually talking and exchanging things, our meditations, our morning, and sometimes we do readings for ourselves, things that we experience in the classes we teach, sometimes together, sometimes alone. And we have a sort of a writing process where we write different parts of our books and then edit them together, and there's a lot of refinement. So we have a lot of time where things just come through. We often walk our dogs early in the morning and have these very thoughtful discussions. It's a good time to be out walking, and just things come to us, just words, phrases come in. And we often, when we do meditation, which is something I would recommend to people, whether they're reading oracle cards as their meditation or whatever mindfulness practice they have, to write it down, to journal it. We like to use voice to text, which you can do through like a cell phone or your computer or desktop. And then you have it as a record too, so you can keep going back and these insights, and you look at it like, wow, that word master in the making came out of my meditation. I hadn't heard that before, something shows itself. And then we can talk with it and keep refining it and reflecting on it.
Oh, wonderful. I just want to celebrate that your relationship, A, has survived from working together, but B, is obviously such a fertile ground for that sort of co-creation to happen. I think that's just a beautiful thing. Is that something, when you're working with people, is that something that they find particularly interesting about working with the two of you? The fact that you've got this kind of creative melting pot thing going on together between you, is that something that becomes a topic when you're working with people? Or do people say anything about that?
Well, I think a lot of our presentations and things we do, we've co-written or co-teach, sometimes together. So people like that because you get the male-female perspective on the same topic, and that we relate well to each other and have, a great respect and love for each other. So that comes through, and it's rather rare. I don't know why it's so rare, but it is a rare phenomenon. But I feel very fortunate and blessed that I've had this experience in this lifetime with her.
Yeah, because I would imagine, because if I'm thinking about working with somebody or with a group or with people, I am my decision of who to work with is affected by my impression of their quality of life, of their quality of relationships, perhaps. So it just really strikes me as that's quite a strong aspect of the presence the two of you are bringing into the world, that particular thing that you've created and are creating together ongoing. So I just felt like I really wanted to name that, because that is quite a significant, energetically speaking, that's a significant aspect of your presence together, isn't it? And when you're offering.
And out of that, we in quite a few years ago, we decided to have a nonprofit organization in the United States, a 501c, and we call it Awakenings Institute. And it came out of another dream of imagining the world being a world where everyone's gifts are respected and honored, including nature's. So there was sort of this idea that we could come together, at least as a vision, and bring that as much as possible in reality, which goes back to your first question, Masters in the Making. How can you embody this? And that we feel like because of the life circumstances we've faced, and probably a lot of people listening, challenges come up. You reach a certain level, a certain plateau, we at a certain level of success, and then other challenges happen in our business. Social media changes, people's interests change, things happen to you personally, and all kinds of things, and you have to reset yourself and go to another level. You can't sort of stay where you are, or as Will Rogers says, you'll get run over. If you stay on the tracks, you're going to get run over.
Exactly. Absolutely right. And I just want to also highlight that thing that you said about when you do a meditation or work with oracle cards or something like that, and you get insights coming through, to capture those. I just really want to reinforce that, because I've done that myself. I find it extremely valuable. I've had situations where I'm about to start a project, let's say, and I do a reading for the project specifically and write it down, and then it goes into the project file. So I refer back to it when I'm planning or taking actions, because it takes me back to that pure place of connection with the essence of what I'm trying to do and the insights that get in service to that. So when you were speaking about that just then, I thought I really want to reinforce that, because I think some people think, well, no, there's real life and then there's meditation and insights.
Right. That's not a good split, a good schism. I mean, because then it can be very enjoyable while you're in meditation, but it doesn't really carry over, and you want to figure out how to carry it over. And that's really the point of our work here at Awakenings, and in that new book, Awakening to Your Magnificence, of how do you embody it? How do you live it? Because the challenges are going to come today or tomorrow. What are you going to do with that? And an interesting thing, Catherine, is, and it's sort of hiding in plain sight, is there are going to be stressors come, often repeated stressors, although sometimes new ones. And if you're not ready for it, you're going to react the same. In fact, you might be instantly reacting the same. The point is, how can you quickly recover? What can you do to be in a better place? And the more you see, like, wow, I'm in this place where I'm a master in the making, and this is now, instead of being fearful or saying the sky is falling, hey, this is an opportunity to look at it differently and be present and know it will work out.
Lovely. I love that. So please let us know a bit more about what you're doing at the Awakenings Institute, and how people get involved with that. What's going on?
Right. What goes on there? So we have a very extensive, actually, websites getting through, getting thru.org. And we have ongoing, we have little videos. We just did one yesterday on one of our processes with EFT tapping called the Fear Monster Reframe. Excuse me, and that.
The fear monster reframe. I
The
like the
Fear
sound of that.
Monster Reframe with EFT. Now, the EFT tapping, for people who don't know that, emotional freedom techniques, which have been around a few decades now, we were early adopters of that and write a lot about it. And this is one of our EFT, what we call getting through techniques, where you imagine your fear as a monster. When you use imagery, it's very powerful for healing, as you may know. And in the one we just did yesterday, the lady's fear, and this is something I think a lot of people are going to relate to. This was an incredible process, Catherine. Um, her 88-year-old uncle was declining seriously in health, and even though she's a healer and has taken a lot of our programs, like what we offer, like spiritual coaching and healing, still, if you're 88 years old, how much can you help a person? And she was very stressed by this, of how she's going to help her uncle, or if she could really help her uncle. Maybe she was in some sense undeserving. There was something wrong with her because I can't help this person even though I want to. So that fear image, and some people see she imagined it as a fear. And interesting, you might say, well, how do you do that? Well, it's all there instantly in your unconscious, which where her was like a big 10-foot Hulk, if you know the cartoon Hulk, all dark and gray and green and fumy and muscle bound, and looking over her. And after doing the EFT tapping, which is some affirmations, just an affirmation, and doing some key tapping points, actually, it's tapping your head, top of your head, your eyebrow, the side of your eye, under your nose, and under your lower lip, your collarbone, and under your arm. There's a few more things. Anyway, doing that a couple rounds, her monster just shrunk. It just shrunk into just a little, teeny nothing, just something that and it became almost humorous. This thing that she was so stressed about and ruminating in that part of her mind, going around and around. What am I going to do? What's wrong with me? I'm not deserving. I'm not good enough. All those fears and overwhelms cycling. And it just disappeared in a few minutes, and she could laugh about it.
Wow. Well, great result.
And it was embodying. I mean, you can kind of say it intellectually, like, oh, it's not, that big a deal, or, he's getting older, and, so you can say it mentally, but that doesn't do anything. Yeah. But if you embody it and have a process, and that's what we teach these processes on our blog and in our books and in the trainings, yes, what we do, individual consultations with people to help them shift from kind of where they are to where they want to go, to live their purpose more deeply and do what they're here.
Yeah. Beautiful, wonderful. I love how you're combining the power of visualization with the value of the tapping, because that doesn't automatically come with the tapping work, does it? You using visualization?
No, it's not done as much as we've done it for many years. Our approach to EFT, and our first book, Getting Through Your Emotions with EFT, was all about what we call the getting through techniques. Because once you are able to pinpoint the anxiety, because a lot of people know, hey, I'm uncomfortable, I'm fearful, I'm worried, but what's underneath it? And to really heal it deeply, sustainably, you need to get to that. And that's that, whatever it is, the fear monster reframe, or the different levels of the energy system, or we have the many different ways of approaching it. We have one even on angelic EFT, connecting with angels and bringing them into the process.
Very nice. So I'm interested. I was going to actually ask you about tapping. I hadn't realized, because I haven't participated with it myself, I hadn't realized that you are always tapping kind of the same parts of the head and body. Is that accurate? Did I?
Right. There's 7 key acupressure pressure points you touch or tap or touch a few times with your fingers or 2 fingers. And before that, you say an affirmation, and it needs to be effective, very targeted. So, if you're if just to give that example I did in the Fear Monster Reframe, if she would have just said, even though I'm worried, I can't help my uncle. That's not as good as being really specific of exploring it, even though I'm worried that I'm not good enough.
Yeah. So going down a layer. So
that getting to that deeper core, right? Because otherwise it's sort of deflected.
Yeah. Excellent. So is it with the tapping that you are kind of anchoring the affirmation into the body? Is that what you're doing, or is it doing something else?
Okay, yeah. So what it does is it changes and they've done over 100 studies, and it changes its effectiveness, but it changes the brain and the heart. When we feel like it's opening the heart and relaxing the mind. So if the mind's chatter and all that worrying and going over and over again, recriminations and so forth, stops, you can be clear, and it balances the body like the energy systems, like they do with acupuncture needles, but this is with your fingers, so there's no side effects or invasiveness to it. So it puts you in a relaxed state, and that's why you can have changes. In fact, because if you're not in a relaxed state again, nothing might change.
Yeah, exactly. Wonderful. And how did you get into it in the first place?
Well, yeah, that sort of goes back to our spiritual awakening story. And well, I'll start from a certain point, not to give you the whole long story, but at a certain point,
But first you were born. No,
I was born in Buffalo, New York. No, I'm going to go fast forward and really looking at awakenings after I finished college. Was very interested what was out there. This was several decades ago, before the internet, so there wasn't as much available, but I traveled different places, did Japanese tea ceremonies, went to Naropa Institute for studying Buddhist studies, and all kinds of things. And I know a lot of people have done that, but I eventually landed in a Gurdgieff school, a psychological spiritual school. And it was very useful, very powerful. And I learned a lot, and we still teach some of the teachings, and the esoteric teachings are very rare and accurate, which we use in our work now. But there were some problems with it. And one of it is sort of following the leader pattern, the guru pattern, the awakened person, and you just sort of have to go through that person. And I did meet my wife there, and we married and eventually left. But we realized that, hey, why can't we awaken directly? Why do we need someone else to help us to awaken? And I always knew that didn't make sense. But I enjoyed the school, the people enough to stay with it and just say, okay, okay, you can think them, you're the chosen people again. But no, I don't really believe that. So anyways, once what I realized what was missing, Catherine, you asked me how we got into this, was the healing component. Because so many people were so repressed in this organization, it was kind of a cult in a way, that they couldn't express their emotions. In fact, they were told just to not express their emotions, but observe them, which is kind of a tricky thing. How do you observe your emotions without expressing them? So people were kind of on pins and needles and then would blow up. So we realized that was a missing component, i.e. your shadow psychological work. And after we left that Gurdgieff group, Spensky group, we started seeking for different ways to heal. And we went into hypnotherapy and NLP, Reiki, body talk, many, many different modalities. And we started developing our own, as I mentioned, getting through techniques, which was a key component for awakenings, because we still meet people even who just meditate a lot and they don't deal with the shadow stuff. And that's a missing component that really needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I love how you've integrated all of these different ways of coming into the question, of whatever the question is. Maybe the question is, how are we masters in the making? Maybe that's the question. But, and I think that Gurdjieff and a number of other thinkers from those periods, they were what was needed for their time, weren't they? And then that gave greater space and a platform for people like you to step on from, to then, and interestingly, in the way that you've been talking, I can hear legacy stuff from that work that you did right at the beginning, but you've incorporated it and integrated it with other things since then, including attending to the actual physical body and the actual emotional and psychological experiences that we have, which you're absolutely right.
Right.
We absolutely need that, don't we?
Right. And the Gurdgieff, he talked about his school as a fourth way of integrating awakening into everyday life. It was called the fourth way. But as I said, it had that really essential missing component about the healing, the shadow work. And that's what we've actually tried to do. And it's sometimes called the middle path, or Buddhism and different psychology. So, and it really is, we call it the path of love, too, is another way of doing it. It's a thing we say God is love. We've all heard that, but I wonder if you just say love, you're actually sort of saying God, creator, whenever we say or use that word, especially intentionally.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting you say that, because I feel like there's more and more people are saying things like that at the moment. Things like, God is love, truth is love, love is truth, all those sorts of the understanding that these things are one, or at least they're experienced as one in the way that we are capable of experiencing these things.
Right.
At all, in our own limited corporeal way. So yeah, beautiful. I just love how all these things are integrated together. So when people are coming in and working with you, they don't necessarily need to know all these different ingredients that you've explored along the way. They just know they're in this lovely held space where you're helping them. They don't need to understand behind the curtain. Obviously, you're sharing stuff with us now for the listeners who are getting like a sneak peek behind the curtain. But it's true, isn't it? People, you don't need to tell everybody about that when you're working with them.
No, because some people are just starting off and they just, stumbled upon this interview, for example, and they, what is this? And hey, I'm just very new to this, but I'm interested. They're just starting, kind of like I was decades ago looking for the Gurdgieff, what turned into the Gurdgieff school, which turned into all kinds of things, channeling and healing and coaching and so forth. And other people are very veteran. They're very, they're thought leaders, they're change makers, they're leaders already and have a lot of development, but they want to go deeper. And that's why you're the master in the making, because you can always go deeper.
Yeah.
And if you're with a spiritual community, like in our trainings and so forth, or wherever you can find it, that's important because there's a lot of opposing forces and a lot of things that are denying and a lot of resistance to more love, more collaboration, the new age, the new Aquarian age we're entering into, which does question authority, but we need to do it in an intentional way, a loving way, so we can come together and be stronger. And it really, a small number of people, as you know, can make a big difference. So that's why when we have our healing programs, there's just amazing things that happen. And I think one of the reasons is not only processes like that fear monster reframe I shared are powerful, but when you're with a little group, even a small group, it seems to magnify the effects. It's just a wonderful environment for healing rapidly and getting deep insights.
Oh, lovely. Wonderful. So would you like to tell us a bit about this new book that's coming out soon?
Well, it's actually already out. It's Awakening to Your Magnificence, Your Journey into the Next New Frontier for Humanity. It was released very recently at the time of this interview. And we have what we call Mysteries Roadmap. And I've been sharing some of the things Jane and I at Awakenings Institute have been doing for decades, but a lot of things recently came to us in the last few years. I mentioned oracles and tarot cards, which is something we had looked into a little bit over the years, but we became very intensely interested because there's so many synchronicities that occur. And also the Akashic records. Since we did hypnotherapy, you go into past lives, you're in the Akashic records, or even a past life, even in an age regression. But when you're in the Akashic records, the universal database, that's what people like Edgar Cayce channeled, but you don't have to be Edgar Cayce to get there. You have this broad awareness of things in a very big context. And that's why they sometimes call it a library or records or a hall of records, although people have different um, experiences of it. So using things like the Akashic records, the universal database, using different special oracle decks in our practices, and opening up what we call to the field of pure potential. We'd always been very much into connecting with the soul for healing and guidance, but when you access this soul awareness into that higher field of infinite potential, the canvas of God, sometimes it's called, then even seemingly more is possible. Let me share a little story of, let me share, there's so many stories of a client. She wanted help with a relationship, and this is something relevant to a lot of people. Her husband wasn't that, quote, spiritual or into the spiritual interest she was. So she didn't really know, should I be in this relationship? He doesn't seem to, want to do any of this. What should I do? So we drew some oracle cards, and the theme of the oracle cards were she was on a vision and she was opening up the new possibilities. And then she went to the Akashic records, the Akashic field. She had a guide who took her, and she was on a boat, like a Viking boat, just by herself. But her husband of this lifetime, of this centuries ago, in this past record, was not there. But here's the thing that was really amazing, Catherine. She felt her husband there in spirit with her. Pausing there. It was very profound. Her whole relationship for years changed in that moment. Because even though he wasn't there and like, I don't really do these, kind of some of the things we're talking about today, I do support you. I do love you. And she said that was enough. She didn't even have to know where the destination of her boat was going. She just knew he was there supporting her. And she came back. Isn't that beautiful?
It's so beautiful. And it actually resonates with something I was talking about recently with somebody about where we think that somebody needs to agree with a particular concept or a particular methodology or activity in order to be in rapport with us. But actually, maybe that's entirely not necessary, because there's something much more essential where they are present, and that's what really matters. So your story is exactly the same as that notion. And very, very touching story. That's so beautiful. I wonder how many people listening to this are kind of reevaluating.
Right.
Am I actually with the right person?
Oh, I think that's very common. And, we have, I think there's a dominance of women who take a lot of our trainings and so forth, not exclusively. And many of them have been in situations like that, or are in situations, what do you do? And it's a very practical, common thing. And so that's being in that moment, how do you become a master in the making if that's your situation?
Yeah, beautiful. Well, it also reminds us that our quality of presence with somebody is so valuable in terms of what it brings into their life. And it doesn't have to be about what are we talking about? What are we agreeing about? It's that quality,
Right.
that quality of presence in the life.
Yes.
Yes, it just reminded me, just kind of out of the blue, when I did my master's degree in humanistic psychology, that we did an assignment, and one of the things I did was it was an assignment about networking, and I got on this idea of interviewing people. Was I giving them what they needed in the relationship? When I interviewed my then partner, he said, Catherine, what you don't seem to realize is there's nothing I need you to do. I just need you to be here.
Right.
And you are here. You're giving me everything I need. And the Western conditioned part of my mind had difficulty with this, because I thought it needed to be about, no, you need to behave in this way or give me this or do these actions or behaviors. he wasn't interested in any of that. It was just, no, your presence is all I need, and you're giving it to me. I'm happy. So there was a part of me that was really disappointed with that answer. But actually, that's the greatest gift. That answer is the greatest gift.
It's a good expression of love.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I remember Jane told me at one point that she was bonded to me when she realized that I just accepted her, for whatever her positives or negatives were, that I was going to accept her. And I feel like she accepts me. Now, that doesn't mean we don't point out things, that are challenges or things that we want to improve, practically speaking. And if someone's in an abusive relationship, I'm not suggesting just to accept that either, to respect yourself and see what is the next step for becoming a master in the making for you.
Yeah, 100%. And this then brings another question for me. Do you feel that when people are working with you, that they get an increased sense of self-acceptance?
Yes, I would say that's part of love and the soul. So when you connect with the soul has just complete acceptance and love and compassion for you. It's good to actually try to return that. You can do that in meditation where you're just feeling love. You're sending it out almost as a thank you to your soul. But especially at first, we have some connecting with the heart. And you can do that now, just kind of breathing into the heart. And as you breathe in, that's relaxing you. And you exhale slowly. And you breathe in your own energy into your heart. And you exhale and you release. And just imagine opening up to a greater presence that is your soul. Just allow that to be there. A greater understanding, just an acceptance and expansion. You keep breathing into your heart this pure loving energy as you connect more with your soulful presence. And when you quiet yourself, you might want to just hang out there. You might receive a message or a color or an image. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So let me get a message for our interview today. Yes, we are all love and we are all masters in the making. At the deepest level, we are all one. How could we be anything else? We come from the one. We go back to the one. We are always one. We just forget that at times, and that is okay because that is part of the remembering. And as you remember who you are, you become more of who you truly are to help yourself and other people.
Amen to that. Beautiful. Thank you. Wow. So beautiful. I mean, I could very happily talk to you for hours on end, Philippi, because this is just such very, very beautiful, gentle, sweet, nourishing, illuminating, all this stuff we're talking about.
We like to, we like all that, and thank you for those positive remarks. And we like to find ways that are very quick and direct and practical, not, even though we're talking about more spiritual things, we like to ground it in practical approaches.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I will just say to everyone listening to this, if you're actually driving at the moment, maybe next time you're not driving,
Right.
come back to this episode and just be still and actually do that little meditation Philip just gave us, just in your own space, and just allow that to be. And then people could do that on their own, couldn't they? So
yes, they could, for sure.
in your book,
we have different meditations and things which they can access for free on our website too.
Gorgeous. Wow. Well, I'm going to slightly switch gear now and just ask you, is there something you would like to say to people who are trying to be part of the solution in the world at the moment? Whether they are like leaders or teachers or parents or, they're trying to help other people. They're trying to provide some sort of helpful leadership of some kind or other. And some of those people may be listening to us right now. So
Right.
Is there something you'd like to say to those people to help them engage with? I mean, obviously, your book sounds amazing, and I'm going to recommend everybody checks that out. But, short of that, before they bought the book, is there something you'd like to say to those people that will help them really connect with some of what we've been talking about today?
Yes, those holistic-minded people who want to make a difference and probably already are. Um, I think sometimes we get overwhelmed by trying to do too much because there's so much that needs to be done. There's so much out of alignment that we forget what we can do. So that takes us back into the moment. What can I do? And we talked about earlier, if something comes up and an unexpected bill or something that that's troublesome in the moment, what can you do? How can you have equanimity? How can you be the pure, clear presence which nothing can disturb? I am the clear, poised presence which nothing can disturb, which is, by the way, something you could say in that moment. So it could be that, or it could be, what do I enjoy doing? What am I good at doing that I can do today? What can I do? I have today, I'm very busy today, but I have a couple minutes here and there. Is it an artwork? Some people I talk to and say, I'd love to do artwork. I never do artwork. And my wife used to be in that. She's extremely artistic. When am I going to have time to do it? Well, you find time. You commit the time. You make time to do whatever that is, whether it's your art, maybe helping someone, calling someone, doing some healing work like we like to do, maybe listening to an inspiring podcast like this one. So whatever it is, just take a little step, and that's doable.
Beautiful. Wow. Well, I'm going to just bring in a few more things before we wind up for today. Thank you very much for that. You have given me a link to give to the listeners, which is a gift. And this is for the Pure Potential Kit, which includes EFT tapping manual, super reality shift healing report, which sounds very exciting, and video demonstrations of some amazing healings. And you can get those by going to gettingthrough.org, and through is spelled THRU. So that's gettingthrough.org/spiritual. Or you can go to tinyurl.com/pure-potential to get that gift. And I am personally going to go and check that out myself later.
Yeah, there's some amazing healing videos of helping people with bursitis and tendonitis and some chronic pain things and all kinds of things by using some of these processes we've been referring to today.
Amazing. So I'll put those in the show notes anyway, but you can just go there and tinyurl.com/pure-potential. So Philip, one more question for you. We've talked about quite a lot today. Has there been a favorite part of our conversation for you today?
I think just the general interaction. I just enjoy your presence, your grace, your attention. That's helped me share more deeply and lovingly too.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that so much. So finally, is there anything else that you would like to say to the listeners in terms of anything that you think might be helpful for them to reflect on or contemplate across the coming week?
Well, just remember, life is brief. It may seem like sometimes going very slowly or agonizingly long, but in total, it's very brief. And we have a certain amount of time to address karma, unfinished business, express our potentials, our soul's plan, what we really came here to do, have the different relationships, and there's some yet to come and some yet to complete or go forward with. So all of that's there in the offing. So to just try to take care of yourself, and self-care is an important thing to being with enough rest and sunlight and diet, exercise and so forth. So you have enough energy every day to be your best and to become a master in the making and continuing that daily.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Philip. And thank you for listening and watching, everybody. That's all for Truth and Transcendence for today. You can find our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Please give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, tell your friends, and comment on what we were discussing today. And please check out Philip and Jane's new book. Philip, would you just remind us of the title of the book?
It's Awakening to Your Magnificence, Your Journey into the Next New Frontier for Humanity. And it's at Amazon.com in Kindle or paperback.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much to the listeners, and thank you again to Phillip Mountrose. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.